Hey, what's going on everyone? Back with another knife review this afternoon. Today we are going to be looking at the Chavez Ultramar. This is the production version, so it is actually made by Riot out of China, but I'm going to go over the pros and cons and give you my thoughts on it after I've carried it for a few days now. Before we get started, wrist check. Today I'm sporting the Sangen Instruments Neptune. This is the DLC version with a Zulu Alpha Blackbeard strap. All right, so background from my experience with Chavez knives, I don't have any. This is my first one. It was recommended to me by a friend and, just another knife maker that I had to try out. I do think, and one of the things I want to do in the future is this kind of struck me when I was coming home from work today, but, I was thinking about this in terms of if I had one knife, would this be my one knife? And I kind of think secretly, us knife collectors or people who are enthusiastic about knives, we're always looking for that one knife that does everything that you're like, okay, yep, this is the one knife that if I got rid of everything else, this is the one that I would keep. So I kind of framed my review, based on that attitude, if you will. And I have been impressed with this knife, but there's a few things that kind of keep it from being the one. All right, first things first, we're going to jump right into the pros of the knife. The first pro for me was this blade. The camera does a pretty good job of capturing it, but this is the Tanto version of this blade. It's M390 steel, which is amazing. The fit and finish, it's a very impressive blade. That was one of the things that stuck out to me. As soon as I fired this thing, the blade, they did a great job with it. Another thing concerning the blade, and I haven't read many reviews on, hard use or anything with this knife, but this thing is really thick too, and you pick it up and it's like, this thing is really hefty. And so, the blade stock that they used is super ultra thick, comes to a really nice edge. You can tell they really overbuilt this thing to the tune of Medford, and I'd kind of put it on that level as far as how overbuilt it is. The next pro that I noticed was the actual lockup of the blade once you fired it, which again, the more I mess with Riot knives, this is what I've come to expect from them. But the lock bar insert right there, the lockup, there's no over travel or anything of that nature. When this knife is closed, it was perfectly centered right from the factory. So this thing, realizing it's made in China, whatever. Riot did a great job with the production of this knife. All right, the next pro, and I know I talked about it a little bit with the McNeese review that I did, but this lock bar is chamfered, and contrast that to the Medford and how it was kind of sharp, kind of dug into your finger or your thumb a little bit. This one's really nice. Again, it's not on both sides, but the fact that they thought to do that, kind of shows a level of detail that I definitely appreciate. Kind of forgot to cover it. The other pro that I have for this knife is these can be picked up very readily for around the $300 mark. I'm not sure what the MSRP is, but I ended up picking up this one on the secondary market, and these can be had for $300 if you look in the right places. So that's also really cool. Very affordable for what it is. All right, next we're going to get into some of the cons based on my experience with this knife. The first one just being the very, very strong detent that locks this thing into place. You obviously don't want to have a knife blade flopping around, but this one is actually, and it could just be because it's not broken in yet, but this is a very, very stiff detent when it's closed, and it almost makes me lose confidence in my ability to not lose my thumb if I try to actuate the knife with my thumb. So flicking this thing, pretty confident, but still super tight, and maybe over time it would get more loose, but definitely do not have the confidence there with my thumb yet. All right, the next con for me is just going to be the sheer weight of this thing, and there's no doubt in my mind, if the blade wasn't working, you could easily knock someone out with this thing. There's no weight relief anywhere around here. It's a solid titanium backspacer. There's no cutouts. This thing is really chunky, and for me, kind of finding the center of gravity, because when I opened this, I was like, man, I can't even feel the blade. The center of gravity on this knife is really far back, right? You usually like to see it, a little bit forward. it's very far back and it's apparent. So, you know, given the fact that the blade is so thick, I mean, it really speaks to, you know, how much mass and weight you have back here in the handle, and that was noticeable right out of the gate. All right, the next con for me, and I was actually quickly corrected by my friend who suggested this knife for me. Seeing this pocket clip, I thought, as soon as I took this thing out, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be buying leather cuts. I'm gonna start wearing, you know, thumb rings and joining a motorcycle gang. Like, to me, this clip, and you know, another one of the cons is it's definitely a shallow carry clip. Like, this does stick out a lot more than most of the knives that I'm used to, but the skull for me is a little over the top. But again, Chavez thought of that, and they do supply you with an extra clip that's just normal. So, you know, people who aren't in a biker gang can rejoice. You can throw a normal one on there and you know, fit in with the rest of us in society. So that was one of the cons. You know, the pocket clip, it's pretty nice, but for me, the skull, I was like, it was a little bit over the top for me. All right, the next con for me was the thumb stud, and not sure if you can see. I mean, they did a good job of beveling this out so that you can actually get, you know, some sort of like friction on it to be able to flick it or what have you. But there's also a Torx screw there, and it's not countersunk at all. So what I find, especially flicking with, you know, my my pointer finger, it's kind of abrasive, I would say. Like, it feels sharp to me, where it would be nice to see that beveled a little bit. So again, not sure if you can capture it, or I'm capturing it on my phone, but at the same time, like, having this countersunk to make it more yeah, kind of sunk in there, so you don't have this like sharp edge, that would definitely make it a more comfortable knife to actuate. The next, and I'll just call it an item because it's not really a pro or a con, but the jimping on this thing is not for the faint at heart. I mean, all day if I had gloves on, this would be absolutely awesome, but it is pretty sharp. It's very like grippy, and you know, for an ungloved hand, it might be a little bit much. I tend to like finer, shallower jimping, just because, you know, if my hands are sweaty, whatever, which is normally how I would use an EDC knife, so that I can actually, you know, find friction on there. But you know, these are super far apart, and they're, you know, not beveled or knocked down really at all. So just be wary of that, or aware of that should you choose to buy this. The next item that I noticed, so this knife is running on bronze phosphorus washers, but dissimilar to other knives that I own, it kind of like, so when I'm moving this to close it, if I rock the blade back and forth, and I mean, you can't really see it, but it's almost like maybe a washer is spinning in there. I'm really not positive, but it's not smooth, open, or closed. Like, you can kind of feel a little bit grit grinding. I probably do need to, you know, obviously it's a washer, I should oil it a little bit, but just out of the box, there's just like a little bit of up and down blade play, whereas like what I'm used to, and again, I know this might be a bad example, but so a Shiro, I feel like it's very smooth closed and opening. Like, there's no kind of like middle, like, you know, there's no middle ground there. It's either opening or closing. What I found with the Chavez is there's a little bit of play, kind of shifting gears to closing to opening, and gritty. But you can see that, I mean, this ball detent in here, like, it's pretty massive, and so you kind of have to overcome that through the whole stroke of closing or opening it. But still, there's something in here that is moving a little bit, and it rattles, and you know, I thought that was, you know, definitely worth noting. The next design item, which you know, I put it in my cons column, but it may not be for you, because it, you know, I think this blade looks great, but this false choil and the fact that this you know, we have this jimping up here, it might give people the false sense that they can use this as a choil, which again, I have big hands, but I feel like I have pretty skinny fingers, and you do not want to be using this choil as a choil. You will cut the hell out of your hand. So one thing to keep in mind, again, it kind of comes back to things I've said in other videos. You know, if you're going to put a choil in, like a shaman, put it in and make it usable. If not, I don't know. I mean, where I'm at with my knife collection, I'm not too interested in fake choils or things that really don't serve a purpose. The next item that I noticed was just kind of like the blocky Lego nature of this thing. The ergonomics on it are not good. I was trying it in different positions, and I don't know if it's just how the back is. Like, I mean, they kind of took it down at a straight angle on all of like the back of it. But when I really like grip down on this, it has the tendency to kind of roll in my hand. And again, what I'm using as an example would be like the Shaman, which like I feel like it stays up and down. I can get my thumb super far above it. With this one, again, it looks really cool, but it's a little bit, form over function, I would say. Again, looks hella cool. I mean, totally blows the Shaman away. But as far as ergonomics go, I don't know. I kind of struggle with it. There's a hot spot right here, but again, it's the look of the knife. It's not for everybody, and yeah. All right, the last item that I noticed about this knife was the location of the thumb stud, and obviously it's not using this as a blade stop or anything like that. What I would have liked to see is this to be moved up, so maybe right around where the M390 is, to give you a little bit more mechanical advantage for flicking this thing open, because this is a super sharp knife, as I said, and it might just be because it's brand new, but if this was back here a little bit more, I would be able to thumb flick it. As of right now, I'm barely able to flick it with my finger. So I think if you move this up, maybe where like that key is, this would be a lot more friendly on your fingers for flicking it open. And that concludes my review of the Chavez Ultramar. Again, I appreciate this knife. I think that it was a cool recommendation from my friend. It definitely does not fit the bill as far as if you had one knife, would this be it? No, but I think it's a valuable part of a collection. It's really cool. Again, yet another example of how Riot is just kind of killing the knife game, and I'm really hoping that US manufacturers kind of step up their game to keep up with the production quality that we have coming out of Riot right now. I don't have any experience with the US made kind of hand ground custom ones, but I mean, as far as, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about custom blades in and of themselves. I would rather have one that looks like this, that's kind of perfect, than looking at it and being like, oh, the hand grind, like it's not the same on this side, but it's handmade, guys, it's handmade. Like, I kind of want to see this in its purest form, and I feel like every example of Riot knives that I've held, I've been like, okay, these guys have the manufacturing completely down to a science, and that's cool to see. I don't think that I'm going to be keeping this knife just because I love full titanium knives. Like, I think that this is awesome, but the more knives that I try, getting away from the big three names, they keep setting the bar pretty high. And like I said, looks, this thing is 10 out of 10, but for my everyday carry, it was a little bit too heavy, a little bit too noticeable in my pocket. The balance was a little bit off. I mentioned about the pocket clip, but realizing that I can change that out, that's kind of a non-starter, a non-issue. Love the M390, so I do think if you can pick one of these up for the $350 ballpark, it's a good deal. But would it replace or be my favorite knife? Absolutely not. And with that, I apologize, I haven't been super good at doing knife reviews or anything like that. I have a 4-month-old son, so he keeps me busy, but I wanted to give you guys kind of a little sneak peek of what I have coming up, because I have gotten some really cool knives in. I finally got my hands on a Shiro Neon, so I'm going to be reviewing that. Also have a ProTech Invictus on the way. The Shaman, covered that one. I also have a PM2 as well as Manix coming, so I kind of want to compare them because I've been out of the Spyderco game for a while. And then finally, I did pick up a non-flipper version of a Curtis F3, so very excited about this one. I think this one kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, realizing that it's $200 more expensive than the Chavez, but unfortunately for the Chavez, this Curtis came in about the same time, and I've been kind of in love with it. So more to come. Appreciate your guys' comments. Thanks for watching my video. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comment section. We'll see you next time. Bye.